The chandeliers shimmered like frozen tears above us. The ballroom smelled of roses and old money, and every whisper seemed rehearsed. I stood near the edge of the crowd, clutching a tray that didn't belong to me anymore. Just a year ago, I was her assistant, trusted, quiet, invisible, until she decided humiliation would make her shine brighter. Tonight, she wore her cruelty like perfume. Every step she took echoed with the kind of confidence that only power can fake. The CEO's wife, the queen of the company's empire, the woman who once smiled at me in boardrooms and whispered, "You're the only one I can trust." Now she was walking down the aisle again, not to say I do, but to renew vows in front of cameras, investors, and the same people who had watched me be escorted out of the company 6 months ago. She'd called it downsizing. But everyone knew it was personal. She made sure of that. I had planned to stay away. I had moved cities, started rebuilding quietly. But when the invitation arrived, addressed to me, handwritten in gold ink, something inside me cracked open. It wasn't guilt. It was curiosity, and maybe something darker. I remember her laughter at my exit. The whisper in the hallway. She thought loyalty meant power. And I remember the folder. She forgot to delete from the shared drive, labeled personal. Inside it, I found things she would burn the world to hide. Contracts, emails, recordings, a web of deals that didn't just cross moral lines. They buried them. So when I walked into that glittering ballroom, I wasn't just a guest. I was a quiet storm dressed in velvet. Her husband on the CEO and didn't recognize me at first. He looked older, thinner, the kind of man whose smile was more expensive than sincere. "It's been a while," he said, shaking my hand too long. "I didn't expect to see you here." "I wasn't sure I'd come," I said softly. "But it felt wrong to stay away." He nodded, distracted by the cameras. He didn't notice the small flash drive in my palm, disguised as a charm on my bracelet. He didn't notice that the background music, soft piano under chatter, was connected to my laptop backstage. The lights dimmed. The announcer called for attention, and she appeared radiant in white silk, the very picture of forgiveness and rebirth. "Tonight," she said into the microphone, "isn't about the past. It's about love that endures." I almost laughed, because I knew what was on that flash drive, and I knew what would happen when I pressed play. But revenge isn't a button. It's timing. It's restraint. It's watching your enemy build their own stage, then deciding exactly when to pull the curtain. I watched her begin her vows. Her voice trembled, beautifully rehearsed, to the man who gave me everything, even when I didn't deserve it. Every camera turned toward her. Every guest leaned forward. I took a slow breath and touched the charm at my wrist. A click, a soft tone. The background music stopped. Then her voice again, but not from the microphone, from the speakers. A recording from 6 months ago. "I don't care what the board thinks. Just make the numbers disappear. My husband doesn't need to know." The crowd froze. She blinked, confused, as her own words filled the hall. "And if anyone finds out, we'll blame the assistant. That girl will believe anything." Gasps, heads turned. Her husband's hand dropped from hers. She looked at me then. Really looked. And for the first time, I saw something close to fear. I didn't smile. I just watched, quietly. The same way she used to watch me, when I begged her not to ruin me. The recording ended in static. Silence. Then whispers. Dozens of them. She tried to speak, but the microphone betrayed her. Squealing, echoing her broken breath through the ballroom. And I realized, standing there among the stunned faces, that I wasn't angry anymore. I was calm, cold, unshaken, because the truth had finally spoken for itself. The lights flickered. Security rushed forward, and before they could reach me, I turned and walked out into the night. My heart steady, my mind already replaying her final expression. The night had just begun. The night air was thick with whispers even outside the ballroom. I could still hear the chaos echoing from within, the clatter of heels, the shouted orders, the rising panic as her perfect world cracked open. I didn't run. I didn't need to. The truth always travels faster than guilt. By the time I reached the parking lot, the first headlines were already forming. CEO's wife caught on tape. During renewal ceremony, the reporters hadn't even left yet. They never do. Not when the powerful are pretending to be holy. I sat in my car and watched the flashing lights dance across the windshield. For a moment, I thought of turning the engine on and disappearing for good. But then my phone buzzed. A message. Unknown number. "You think this is over?" I stared at the screen, then laughed softly. The tone, sharp, entitled, could only belong to one person. She hadn't even waited an hour. I typed back, "It's just beginning." Her reply came instantly. "Meet me, tomorrow, noon. You owe me that much." It wasn't a request. It was the command of someone still clinging to the illusion of control. The same woman who thought reputation was armor. The next morning, the city felt hungover. Every news channel played the same clip. Her voice, trembling, damning her own words. The company had released a statement calling it a technical malfunction, which only made things worse.
Investors panicked.
The board scheduled an emergency session. And me? I walked into the same cafe where I used to bring her coffee every morning. It felt poetic somehow. The hum of espresso machines, the smell of roasted beans, the backdrop of every quiet conversation that had built her empire. She was already there. Sunglasses, trembling hands, a scarf hiding the face that once graced magazine covers. She looked smaller now, not physically, but in the way people do when power leaves them. "You've made your point," she said, her voice shaking more from rage than shame. "You've embarrassed me, destroyed everything I built." I sat down across from her. "No," I said quietly. "You destroyed it. I just pressed play." Her jaw tightened. "You think this makes you better? Do you know what they're saying about me now? About us? My husband won't even speak to me. Then maybe he's hearing the truth for the first time." She leaned in. "You're not a hero. You're a bitter girl who got fired and wanted attention." I smiled faintly. "Maybe, but attention seems to follow the truth, doesn't it?" She slammed her hand on the table, making the cups rattle. People turned to look. Her voice dropped to a hiss. "You think this ends with your little stunt? I can make you disappear." I met her glare and said, "You already did once. I just learned how to return the favor." She froze for a moment, realizing I wasn't bluffing. Then she composed herself and whispered, "You don't know what you've started." But she was wrong. I knew exactly what I'd started. That evening, I received another message. This time from an old contact in the GE, company's accounting department. "They're blaming you," it read. "She told the board you leaked confidential data to rivals. Legal wants your address." There it was, the betrayal I had expected. Her instinct wasn't remorse. It was retaliation, and that was fine. Because she'd just played her last card too soon. I spent the night tracing her. Digital footprints. The ones she'd buried under. Layers of fake charities and offshore accounts. The recordings were only the beginning. What she didn't know was that her personal folder had a mirrored copy synced to a private cloud. I created before she even fired me. Every lie she ever told was sitting there, neatly labeled, waiting. By dawn, I had already sent an anonymous packet to 3 journalists. Not everything. Just enough to make the headlines sharpen their teeth. The rest I kept, like a secret weapon. Revenge isn't one strike. It's a symphony of consequences. But when I saw the morning broadcast, my chest tightened. They had indeed twisted the story, portraying me as a jealous ex-employee with a vendetta. She was crying on camera, playing the victim beautifully. The city, as always, loved a redemption arc. Her tears were flawless. Her acting, award-worthy. And for a moment, it almost worked. Comments flooded in. Sympathy tilted her way. But then, a small glitch appeared in her interview video. A few seconds of unedited background audio before her team could remove it. Her voice again, this time saying quietly off camera, "Make sure the narrative kills her before lunch." The internet caught it before they could delete it. And just like that, the sympathy turned. She had pulled the trigger, but the bullet ricocheted back. Still, I knew she wouldn't stop. Not yet. She was too proud, too desperate. And pride always demands a final act. So when my phone rang that night, an unknown number again, I answered. A man's voice this time. Smooth, practiced, dangerous. "You've made some powerful enemies," he said. "And one of them is paying very well to make you regret it." I didn't respond. I just smiled to myself in the dark. Because what he didn't know was that I had already hired someone too, and her world hadn't fallen apart yet. Not completely. But it was about to. The plan didn't arrive all at once. It arrived in small, sensible pieces, detours and tiny guile, the way a storm assembles itself from quiet clouds. I spent that week moving like a shadow through her life, listening to the patterns, cataloging the weak seams, and deciding exactly where to pull. First, I built an ally out of curiosity. A reporter I'd met once at a company gala remembered my name. His inbox overflowed with the same frenetic noise the rest of the city heard. I fed him a breadcrumb. Nothing raw, Nothing illegal, a link to a contract with a missing clause. Annotated in a way that suggested there was more under the surface. He called. He came. He asked the right questions in the right tone. He smelled the story. Next, I made friends with the small machinery of justice. A lawyer who still believed in reputation more than retainer fees. A forensic analyst who liked puzzles. An investigator who never asked why you wanted the truth. Only how. I paid them in cash in quiet evenings. In pastries and explanations that were thinner than the lies we were about to expose. None of them asked for glory. They asked for documents. I gave them folders that had been waiting. Copies I'd mirrored long before she thought to destroy anything. I also learned how fragile her alliances were. Power isn't loyalty, it's convenience. Her closest board members had been bribed with promises and numbers on a spreadsheet. A few had skeletons of their own. An anonymous email that simply suggested how the next quarter's report might look, with a little public scrutiny, was enough to make two of them call their handlers in panic. Panic is a lever. Panic will move mountains. Most importantly, there was the husband. He was not a man without feeling. He was a man without patience for scandal. He loved his image as much as she did, perhaps more. He called her constantly that week. Short, clipped conversations that reeked of damage control. I used those calls to construct an opening. If he valued the company over the marriage, and if he had built his life on shareholders and shareholder appearances, then the safest place to strike would be where his two worlds collided. A benefit gala, a staged celebration where cameras and donors mixed with vows and applause. We would not sabotage the gala outright. That would be too obvious. Instead, I orchestrated a sequence of small ruptures. I leaked audited excerpts to the journalist, enough to make a line of questioning impossible to ignore. I fed the forensic analyst a file that, when examined, pointed to falsified expense reports tied directly to a charity she chaired. I handed the investigator a list of names connected to offshore transfers that always, somehow, appeared near the deals she championed. Each piece alone was troublesome. Together they would be combustible. The night I set the trap, I was calm enough to thread a needle. I wore the same dress she had mocked the year before. Quiet, nothing dramatic. I sat at the back of the gala where the press clustered, where every flash could be coaxed into a headline. My contact, the reporter, had promised a live stream and a host who liked drama as much as truth. He smiled at me when he saw the folder tucked beneath my clutch. The investigator, blending with caterers, tightened his jaw and handed me a tiny recorder preloaded with a file. I'd scripted to begin when the right name was spoken. Everything depended on one moment, when he, her husband, the CEO, was asked the unavoidable question on camera about compliance and charity allocations. Cameras love inevitability. People love to watch the powerful squirm. When the host, glass raised, posed the question, I pressed the recorder. Her face was composed at first. Then the sequence we'd written together began to unfold. The auditor's report scrolling, the charity's bank statements revealing transfers, the investigator's quiet summary, played in a voice that belonged to someone who had been inside the office for years. The room shifted. Conversation stopped. Knives of conversation she'd used to cut other people were suddenly aimed at her. She reached for the microphone. "This is impossible," she said. "There must be a mistake." The reporter's live feed showed the documents across thousands of screens. Her husband's mouth moved, but no words came that could stitch that fabric back together. Board members slid away like fish sensing a net. I watched the color leave her face, watched the same practiced smile falter and break. It should have been enough. It wasn't. Because power bruises, and bruises want to retaliate. The same week, she launched her counterattack. Fake affidavits. A smear campaign painting me as an unstable saboteur. She brought threats and lawyers. Public denials and private calls designed to scare. That was when the investigator sent me one small message. "You ready? Tonight at the private after-party. He's cornered. She's alone." I was ready. I had rehearsed my restraint until it felt like strength. Revenge had to be surgical. Enough to collapse her defense. Not so violent that I became what she was. The plan was precise. To let her words, her records and the cameras do the work, while I pulled one final thread that would make the world listen. I moved through the crowd with the same silence I'd learned in offices. The silence of someone accustomed to not being noticed until it mattered. Her husband avoided my eyes. Her board shuffled papers and measured distance. She found me at the edge of the terrace, where the city lights made the river look like a vein under glass. "You can stop now," she hissed. "Please, for both our sakes." I looked at her, and for a moment, I almost believed the woman I'd once helped. Then I thought of the meetings, the whispered jokes, the way she'd handed my fate to a paper shredder. "No," I said. "Not yet." She laughed, a brittle thing, and walked away. Behind her, the after-party music climbed. Cameras still rolled. The city below glittered like a jury. I moved to the staff door, where the investigator waited. He handed me an envelope. Not evidence this time, but an invitation. A name circled in red, a time, a promise. It was the moment I'd been building toward. Not to shame her in front of strangers, but to remove her last sanctuary. The small, quiet pockets of trust she'd created for herself. It was the moment when all the little ruptures conspired to become one clean, decisive ending. I slipped the envelope into my clutch and felt, finally, something like peace. The trap was set. The pieces were in place. Tonight, the world would decide how much truth it could swallow, and I would watch. She moved through the after-party the way a queen moves through her court. Swift greetings, practiced warmth in visible armor. I watched from the shadow by the service door, my breath steady, the envelope heavy against my palm. Inside it, a single name, a string of numbers, an address. The investigator had done more than gather paper. He'd found the small, soft places she kept from the cameras, the men who handed her favors, the accounts that never made headlines. The terrace smelled of spilled champagne and regret. She stepped outside for air, and for a second, the city lights made her look young, fragile, human. She sank onto a bench and folded her hands like someone praying without prayer. I crossed the space with slow steps, the way you approach a sleeping animal you once loved and now fear. "You shouldn't have come," she said before I sat. "I had to see how it ends," I answered. She closed her eyes. "You made me look like a monster. You made yourself eat the choices you made." I kept my voice quiet. The night had taught me restraint. It made the final cut sharper. She laughed then, a thin, jagged sound. "People will forgive me. They always do. I can charm my way back. Donations, apologies, staged humility. You don't understand how this works." "I do." I took the envelope out and set it between us. "This isn't about charm." She glanced at it, and for the first time her composure slipped. "What is that?" "Names," I said. "Proof of who took what, where. Bank transfers, signatures, conversations. The people who will tell the truth if asked." Her face went pale. She reached out desperate, but I kept the envelope away. "You can stop this," she whispered. "Please, for my husband, for everyone." "You can stop it," I told her. "If you tell the truth." She shook her head, tears leaking now, not crafted for cameras. "You'd ruin him. You'd ruin us all." There it was, the admission that swallowed her pride. She put her face in her hands and sobbed, the sound small and human. I didn't move. Sympathy would have drowned the moment. Justice required clarity. Behind us, the party hummed on, unconcerned. Inside, donors laughed about causes. Outside, the city kept its indifferent beat. But here, on a bench where velvet met concrete, a life unraveled thread by careful thread. "I could give it to the press," I said. "I could hand it to the board. I could publish everything and watch the world decide." She looked up, horror filling the space between us. "Please," she begged. "There are people who will lose jobs. Families, I made mistakes. I can fix it. Let me fix it." The word sounded like a bargain. "Fix how?" I asked. "By writing checks with money that's not yours? By letting others take the fall? By pretending you didn't know?" She sobbed harder. I thought it would stop. I thought I could control it." "You thought wrong," I said simply. For a long minute she was silent. Then she did something I never expected. She stood, went inside and asked for the microphone. The party stilled as she stepped forward. Mascara streaked, hair undone, the portrait of the woman who had everything, and now wanted to confess. Her speech was not the polished performance she'd rehearsed. It was raw. It was halting. She apologized, not with crafted lines but with broken syllables. She admitted missteps, misallocated funds, careless decisions. She named names in a way that made people flinch. Not all the names. I had in my envelope, but enough to make the house of cards tremble. As she spoke, I watched her husband's face change. The smooth mask slipped. Anger, betrayal, shame, a storm passing over weather that had always been clear. He left his seat with a strange mechanical determination and walked toward us. When he reached the terrace, he didn't look at her. He looked at me. "You did this," he said. His voice was low. There was no accusation in it, only a tired, dangerous disappointment. "I pressed play once," I said. "Tonight I offered a choice." He folded his hands and regarded his wife. "Is this true?" he asked her. She nodded, hysterical now, clutching for mercy. "Yes, I'm sorry. I was stupid. I'm so sorry." The silence that followed was thick with consequence. The gala continued inside, but outside on that terrace, the private scaffolding that held their lives cracked in a way neither of them could mend quickly. I left them there, two people whose futures were now shared and uncertain. The envelope remained in my clutch, untouched. I hadn't needed to use it. The truth she'd found inside herself, under pressure and lights, had become its own instrument. As I walked away into the city's indifferent glow, everything felt both heavier and lighter. The climax had come not from spectacle, but from a confession she had been unable to stage. Some endings aren't violent. They're honest. And in that honesty, I found a version of peace I hadn't expected. But peace, I knew, never lasts long in the presence of power. The following morning felt strangely hollow. No headlines yet, no furious calls, just silence, the kind that comes before something decides whether it will break or heal. I sat by the window with coffee that had gone cold, watching the city breathe as if nothing had shifted beneath it. But something had. By noon, the story was everywhere. Her confession had gone viral, clipped and remixed across social feeds. The once perfect image of the CEO's wife, elegance, charm and whispered envy, was now a looped scandal, her voice trembling through every device in the city. Each word she'd said that night, every cruel whisper and lie, had been rewritten by her own truth. Her husband's empire began to crack before sunset. Clients pulled out, investors panicked, and a board meeting was called within hours. What she'd confessed wasn't just personal. It hinted at deeper rot, the kind that stains every contract and bonus check. The internet didn't just feast on her humiliation. It dissected it, found receipts, and connected dots I hadn't even drawn. By evening, my phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Messages poured in. Some from people who had once looked through me, others from journalists asking for a comment. I didn't respond. I just sat there, letting the noise fade into the hum of the city outside. Revenge wasn't loud anymore. It was quiet, cold, and complete. Still, a part of me waited for guilt to arrive, that heavy ache people talk about after vengeance. But it never came, maybe because what happened wasn't just payback. It was exposure, a truth that had been begging to breathe. The next day, her husband resigned. The statement was sterile, polished, full of personal reasons and time to focus on family. The media didn't buy it. The cameras waited outside their glass mansion, capturing the hollow stare of a man who once thought power was eternal. Behind him, she stood like a ghost. No makeup, no smile, her ring gone. I watched the footage on mute. It should have felt victorious, but it didn't. It felt inevitable. Like the truth had been waiting in a locked box, and I'd simply found the key she left in plain sight. That night, I took a walk past the river. The city lights danced on the surface, fractured, beautiful, temporary. For the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. I didn't feel small. I felt even. Not happy, not triumphant, just balanced. When I passed the venue where it all happened, they were already taking down the decorations. The crystal lights that had once mocked me now lay tangled in crates, dull without power. I stopped for a moment, staring through the glass doors. Somewhere in that room, a version of me had swallowed her pride while the world laughed, and somewhere else, a different version pressed play and rewrote the ending. As I turned to leave, my phone buzzed again, a new message. No name, just a number I recognized too well. Her. You got what you wanted. Are you happy now? I stared at it for a while, fingers hovering. Then I typed back, no, but at least it's honest now. I didn't wait for her reply. I deleted the thread, the backups, even the drive. What was left didn't need evidence anymore. The truth had already done what it was meant to. In the days that followed, the chaos slowed. The story was replaced by new scandals, new names, new distractions. But every now and then, someone would bring it up. How the powerful woman at that lavish wedding had fallen in a single night, undone by her own words. They never knew who pressed play, and that was fine. Revenge isn't about being seen. It's about making sure they finally see themselves. Weeks later, I found myself in the same cafe where it all began. The one where she'd once accidentally spilled wine on my Proposal draft. The waiter still remembered her laugh. He didn't recognize me at first, not until I smiled and said, "Black coffee." Same as before. He nodded and walked away. And for the first time, I didn't replay the humiliation. I replayed the silence that followed. The calm after a storm that had finally burned itself out. The city was quieter that morning. Maybe it was just me. Maybe peace isn't the absence of noise, but the absence of the need to strike back. I looked down at my reflection in the dark surface of my coffee and whispered, almost like a confession, "You did it. You made her listen." Outside, the wind carried a faint echo from the river, laughter, traffic, maybe a memory, but none of it mattered now. The story was written, the chapter closed, and the ending finally mine. This is Revenge Arena, where silence speaks louder than forgiveness, and justice always finds its voice.